Let's learn about one of the trickier endgames, where one side has a knight while the other has a pawn. If I can safely promote my pawn, then I will be able to win. Luckily, you have a tactic that prevents my plan. Can you find it? That's it. Your knight attacks my pawn and checks my king at once, when I move my king out of check. You will be able to sacrifice your knight for the pawn. Draw. This outcome is advantageous for you because you could have lost if I were to promote my pawn. Let's look at another example. In this position, your knight can easily blockade my pawn by moving to the square d1. From this square, your knight will be able to hop around and evade my king while continuing to prevent my pawn's advance. My king attacks two of your knight's escape squares, but your knight has more options than my king can cover. Where could you move your knight to check my king? That's check. I can chase your knight. But you can move it back to the square d1 where it continues to blockade my pawn. This time, I will try to attack your knight from the other side. My king attacks two of your knight's escape squares, but not all of them. Where should you move it to? What if I simply advance my pawn and promote? Your move. Excellent work. Let's look at a knight versus a rook's pawn next, which poses some special problems for the knight. The knight has fewer squares within reach when blockading a rook's pawn. If the pawn is one square from promotion, then the knight will be unable to stop it without the help of the king. Move your king to the square g7. As you can see, the knight is trapped. If you move your knight, I will capture it. You can move your king to the square f6. But your king is still too far away to help. If you try to approach the pawn by moving your king to the square e5, so you're still too far away. Next, I will promote my pawn and then win. In the next example, we'll see how the king can help the knight if it is a bit closer to the pawn. In this example, your king is close enough to make a difference. Start by moving your king to the square b5. I'm going to try to trap your knight in the corner with my king. Move your king to the square a4, where it will be close enough to help defend your knight. I will attack your knight with my king. You have a move that saves your knight and the game. Can you spot it? That's it. I can advance my king and protect the promotion square. But you can calmly step forward with your king to the square a3, because your knight still attacks the square in front of my pawn. When I promote my pawn to a queen, you can capture the queen with your knight, ensuring the draw. The next example is another tricky idea that works against the rook's pawn. In this example, your king is too far away to defend your knight, but there is still hope to hold the draw. My king dominates your knight by attacking all of its escape squares. Move your king to the square e2. Now I will attack your helpless knight. Your knight may be lost, but the game isn't. Simply move your king to the square d2 to see what I mean. I will capture your knight with my king. However, you have a clever move here that draws the game. Can you find it? You found it. You made a stalemate by trapping my king. The next example is a key technique to hold the draw against the rook's pawn. If the pawn is at least 2 squares from promotion, then a lone knight can prevent the pawn from promoting if it can safely blockade it. The knight can use this ring of squares to evade the king and prevent the pawn from advancing. I am attacking your knight with my king, but you only need to stay in the ring. Move your knight to the square A2 to blockade my pawn. Notice how your knight retains the option of moving to either the square C1 or the square B4. My king attacks your knight in the square B4, but your knight can hop to the square C1 and still prevent my pawn from advancing. That's check. Move your knight to the square D3, where it will still be in the ring. Okay, I'm going to try to move my king out of check and then advance my pawn. Move your knight to the square B4, where it attacks the square in front of my pawn. If I advance my pawn, you will be able to take it with your knight. So let me try something a little different. My move allows a tactic that we have already seen in our first example. Do you see how to easily draw the game now? Nicely done. You saw the right idea here. By forking my king and pawn, you ensure the draw. I can move my king out of check, but then you can capture my pawn with your knight, and the game is over. In this next example, we'll see another interesting possibility that the knight has against a rook's pawn. Move your king to the square C2 and trap my king in front of the pawn. If I push my pawn now, do you see what the best move is? Nice work spotting this checkmate, Marco. Let's go back and see what happens if I don't push my pawn. Move your king to the square C2 and trap my king in front of the pawn. This time, I will move my king instead of pushing my pawn. However, you can still checkmate my king in 3 moves. Start by moving your knight to the square E2. I have only one option, which makes it easier for you to calculate. Move your knight to the square C1, attacking the square A2 and forcing me to advance my pawn. My king has no legal moves, so pushing my pawn forward is my only option. Do you see mate in this position? You found it. This is a rare but elegant checkmate pattern. Okay, let's get some practice with what we have learned. In this practice problem, I have a simple plan. I'm going to push my pawn, promote it to a queen, and then win. Can you stop my plan? Her check. That stops my plan for now. Well, I will advance my king. I was planning on doing that anyway. And now? Well played. You used your knight to fork my king and pawn and then sacrificed the knight for the pawn to make a draw. This next example is a little trickier. In this practice problem, your king is in check. If you're not careful, my knight will hop around your king and then blockade your pawn. Your move. Your king nudges my knight away while also controlling the squares C6 and E6, preventing the knight from reaching the square D8 and making a blockade. I can try to reposition my knight, but there is no time for this plan. Promote your pawn into a queen. Sorry, that wasn't the right move. Let's go back and look again. I can try to reposition my knight, but there is no time for this plan. Promote your pawn into a queen. Try moving your pawn on D7 to D8. I can try to reposition my knight, but there is no time for this plan. Promote your pawn into a queen. Using your king to nudge my knight like this is a technique called shouldering. The next puzzle may surprise you. Are you ready? In this problem, I am threatening to shoulder your knight away by moving my king to the square c3. What move should you play before I can carry out my plan? That move doesn't stop my plan. Keep looking. In this problem, I am threatening to shoulder your knight away by moving my king to the square c3. What move should you play before I can carry out my plan? Excellent move. That's an important check that helps your knight get into position to prevent my pawn from promoting. What if I try to nudge your knight away? What should you play now? A clever move. Okay, I will try to nudge you once more. And now? You blockaded my pawn with your knight. Nicely done. In this next problem. In this practice problem, you can win if you safely promote your pawn. Do you see how? Shouldering my knight? Okay, I will try to approach your pawn a different way. Your move. Your pawn is getting dangerously close to promotion. What's your best move here? Very well played. You shouldered my knight away and then safely promoted your pawn with check. Let's see if you can stop my pawn in this next challenge. In this challenge, I'm going to try to shoulder your knight away from my pawn. Is all hope lost, or do you see a path to hold the draw? Moving your knight away. I think I'll just promote next, unless you can find a way to stop me. What a clever check you found. Well, I was going to step forward with my king anyway. Did you have a follow-up? I must hand it to you. You have impeccable endgame technique. Let's see if you can stop my pawn from promoting in this next challenge. In this challenge, I have a pawn that is only 2 squares from promotion. First, I will use my king to ensure your knight does not get too close. Then I will push my pawn and promote. Can you prevent my simple plan? Moving your knight to the edge of the board. Okay, I will continue with my plan. Your move. I suppose if I promote now, you will capture my newly minted queen. So, let me just push your knight away instead. I'm attacking your knight. Where will you move it to? As if by magic, your knight managed to circumvent my king and blockade my pawn. Well done. This next problem will require some creative problem solving. In this challenge, my king is close enough to attack your knight immediately. Where should you move? Blockading my pawn with your knight is a good try, but I will attack your knight again. Now your knight will soon be captured. Any ideas how to hold the draw in this position? Allowing me to capture your knight. Your move. Stalemate. Excellent work finding this creative solution to the problem. This next challenge is the hardest one in the lesson. Here is the final challenge in this lesson. It's your move. How should you play this position? That move is good enough for the draw, but you could actually win here. Here is the final challenge in this lesson. It's your move. How should you play this position? Trapping my king on the edge of the board. Well, it isn't stalemate yet. Your turn. I don't have much to think about since my king can only move back and forth while your knight dances around the board. Your turn. Attacking the square h2 leaves me with only one legal move. Would you like a draw? That is a gorgeous checkmate. Very well played. Excellent effort completing this lesson, Marco. Onwards.